All right, next up in our preview is the Minnesota Golden Gophers, who really bounced back nicely from a 6-7 record in 2023 with an 8-5 record this past year. It was the fourth time in the last 6 years that head coach PJ Fleck led the program to at least 8 wins in a season. That is actually their best 6-year stretch since 1900 to 1905. It is incredible. Well, it's been 120 years since Minnesota's won 8 games in 4 of 6 years. So incredible stretch for PJ Fleck at Minnesota. The Golden Gophers defense, the biggest catalyst for the success last year, they were 11th in the nation in terms of EPA per play, a rising superstar at safety and true sophomore Corey Perich, my number 2 safety in the country already. The real strength, though, Dalton, of this team is that they should have an elite run game.
Yeah, this is something that came to my attention during the offseason because they already had Darius Taylor, who you had as a top 10 back in the country, and he's so darn physical, right? He brings that he's that guy you don't want to tackle in the cold. But I think to get A.J. Turner, the leading rusher from the Sun Belt champion Marshall Thundering Herd down there, these two guys are going to complement each other really well. Taylor with the power and Turner with the speed. Is it 8.3 yards per carry was last year for
most
Turner?
In the country.
He's a player with explosive speed, and I think who brings a different element to this Minnesota backfield. So I think the first problem that you have when you're playing the Gophers is stopping these two running backs because they're both very good and they both bring different styles to the table.
Absolutely, yeah. 8.3 yards per carry for A.J. Turner last year, led the country, and he's the number 2 running back at Minnesota because Darius Taylor is a top 10 back in the country. We'll talk about him in just a second later on. Biggest question mark, is there enough to support the run game, though, for Minnesota? Because they have a brand new quarterback in Drake Lindsey, who's a redshirt freshman. Dalton will talk about him in just a second. Only 5 career pass attempts for him right now. They also lost 3 starters from that offensive line, including a second-round pick and offensive tackle, Ariante Ursary. So, yes, 2 great running backs, but a big question mark at quarterback, and you lost 3 starters on the offensive line, including a superstar in Ariante Ursary, too. But, Dalton, tell me more about the quarterback at Minnesota right now, Drake Lindsey.
Yeah, so it's funny. He's kind of the quarterback that you would expect to be starting at a Minnesota. He's tall. He's 6'5". He's 230 pounds. He's kind of an old-school, classic pocket passer, right? He's going to win from the pocket. He can get under center. I think the play action with these 2 backs from under center is going to be a big part of his success. And I think the big thing about him is just that we kind of just don't know what we don't know, right? I can tell you he's a big, sturdy pocket passer. He's kind of old school. He's something you would see, I think, more often, 20, 30 years ago with teams looking for 6'5" and 230-pound pocket passers, but just haven't seen any extended action from him. The only time he got more than a handful of snaps in a game last year came against Rhode Island. He looked pretty good in that game. He's got a good enough arm to make all the throws, but I think it's just that we're going to find out as we go here. I think that's where we're at with Drake Lindsey. He did a nice job. It was decisive enough that he beat out Georgia Tech transfer Zach Pyron in spring ball pretty decisively for the job because Pyron transferred out to South Alabama right after the spring. So it's Drake Lindsey's job right now. He's a pocket passer. They're going to work a lot of the play action game with him. We're just going to see it and evaluate it as we go. I think that's basically where we're at with him.
The reason why play-action games should work a lot in Minnesota next year is because of their rushing attack and because of really Darius Taylor, my number 7 running back in college football entering next year. He's been a star do-it-all back for Minnesota in his first 2 years of college football. 79.9 PFF receiving grade over the last 2 years, leads all running backs in the Power 4. 1,317 yards after contact over the last 2 years, is second among returning Power 4 running backs. So one of the best runners in college football and a great receiving back. 2, really good size, 6 feet tall, 215 pounds. He has long strides and the mentality to punish defensive backs who try to tackle him. He doesn't have the great long speed right now, but like Dalton said, he is a bruising running back who's a really capable receiver too.
And they brought in Turner to give that explosive, speedy element and help them in the passing game. No, Taylor's a horse. I mean, when you think about just some of the backs that they've had in the past, these big physical backs at Minnesota, he falls right in line with that. I think when you look at Darius Taylor playing in that cold weather, playing those home games in Minnesota, playing all those physical Big Ten games against the Iowas and the Wisconsins of the world, right? I think Taylor is the perfect back to have. And again, I think it really helps that Turner, can take some of the load off of him. Even if you have a fresh Darius Taylor for 4 quarters, because we know he's had some injury things in the past too. Man, oh man, those two guys fresh and complimenting. I'm really excited to watch both of them.
And we love Darius Taylor, but Dalton, a guy who's already a top 20 player in college football for us on our PFF College 50 is the star of this Minnesota defense.
So we've had a lot of talk over the past couple of years about a couple of 2026 safeties in Caleb Downs and Dylan Thieneman. If you draft scouts are looking for one for 2027, go to Minnesota and watch Perich. This is a special athlete who can do everything on a football field, even doubled as their kick returner last year, and didn't even start the full 12 games. It took him a few weeks to get into the starting lineup. He was mostly a special teamer, but this is a special athlete. 5 interceptions last year, second most among all safeties behind Xavier Watts, who was a third-round pick for the Falcons. 7th best PFF grade in the country among safeties. One of just 7 safeties to have an 80 run defense grade and an 80 coverage grade. Him and Kerry Brown are going to carry the secondary at safety, but Perich, I think, is on the way to being a special football player. He showed great things in his first year as a free safety back there at Minnesota. He can do a little bit of everything. I think this is somebody, we keep talking about this 2027 class. This could be the best safety in that class. He is a spectacular football player.
My number 2 safety in the country, only reason why he's not number 1 is because the best defensive player in the country plays safety too, and Caleb Downs, who we'll talk about in just a second at Ohio State. But Perich, man, it was crazy considering, we're looking at Minnesota last year and said, man, they just lost Tyler Nubin, one of the best safeties in college football. Now he's with the New York Giants. How are they going to replace him? Well, they immediately found a new one in Perich, who's just a superstar safety for Minnesota, and right now is the favorite to be the top safety in college football entering the 2026 season once Caleb Downs goes on to the NFL. All right, Dalton, bottom line time for Minnesota right now. Their win total is set at 6.5 for the Golden Gophers. And I mentioned before, they have won 8 games in 4 of the last 6 years with PJ Fleck as the head coach. Are you going over and buying into that history, or will it be kind of a step back with a brand new quarterback?
That's the biggest question, is when you have quarterback questions, you go, that makes you hesitate a little bit. Can they get to 7? 1, 2, I think 3, 4, 5, 6. I think they could get to 7. They might get right at 7. This is just PJ Fleck's just got a good program. They got a really good defense. They can really run the ball. They're going to have to protect Lindsey. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to, is if they really don't have any passing game, that's the scenario where the under hits here. But I think I'm leaning defense, run game, fundamentally sound football, row the boat with PJ Fleck. I think 7 sounds like a realistic target. I'll take him to squeak over on that one. I think it's just, this team has got a really solid foundation.
Yep.
And I like the run game. I like the defense. I think because of Lindsey, they're not going to pull like some huge upset like, say, at Ohio State or at Oregon. But I look at the other 10 games here, and they're going to be at least in all of them, even with Lindsey as a freshman starting quarterback. I think 7-5 is realistic. They can do that.
I'm taking the over too on that. So yeah, I mean, really, like I said, 4 of the last 6 years, they won at least 8 games. And one of those seasons that they didn't win 8 games was the 2020 season, the COVID-shortened one. So
they're in this middle group of the Big Ten with, we're going to talk about, it's like Minnesota, Michigan State, maybe Iowa, Rutgers, USC, Washington, of like, they're going to be playing a bunch of coin flip games, and we'll find out whether some of those teams sneak over or not their goals. But they're right squarely in like that second group where it's like, I don't think you're a playoff contender, but you're still a pretty darn good football team.
Listen, Minnesota is going to play a smash-mouth brand of football next year with their defense and with that run game. That alone should be enough to make a bowl game, in my opinion, for Minnesota. Drake Lindsey, just how good he is as a redshirt freshman, which we really don't really know much about him, with only 5 career pass attempts. How good he is will determine the ceiling, but even so, I'm taking the over for Minnesota. They should win, I think, 7 games, considering they've won 8 games in a lot of recent years, too, for that program.